It's serious this time. Mass Effect 2 is considered by many to be a masterpiece, and in a lot of ways that's true. It's one of the best casts in gaming, it does spectacle in a way few others in this genre can match, and with a completely rebuilt gameplay system, you finally get a glimpse at what combat in this series would ascend to. There's moments that will have you twitching at the trigger, waiting for a moment to lash out. There's moments that are downright hilarious, and there's times that the game will truly reach out and touch your heart. Both Mass Effect 1 and 3 are about saving the galaxy. In the first game, it's a desperate rush to try to stop a threat. You aren't given much time to sit and think about it. In the final entry, you're faced with choices at every minute. Saving the galaxy is just part of the experience. The challenge is found in not losing yourself in the process. So where does Mass Effect 2 fit in? Sure, you battle against the Collectors, who are a threat that needs to be dealt with, but that's not what the game is truly about, at least not for me. To me, this game is about finding out why the galaxy has to be saved. It's about finding meaning beyond morality, and it's about giving you a reason to care. It's funny, I've played the Mass Effect trilogy a lot in the past decade. Wow, that hurt to say. Holy shit. But I've come to hold this opinion that while the second entry is the best, it's clearly not my favorite. Which is a bit confusing as it's where I got my start. It's the one I dove into in the first place, it's the one that got me hooked. On this playthrough, I remembered what made it so special. It's that its peaks really do eclipse its valleys, and while there's plenty I would change about the game if I could, it's incredible just the way it is. We're going to talk about a little of everything today, from how the gameplay has evolved, to the cast we encounter, how we recruit them, and how we gain their loyalty, right into the music that pulls it all together, and the DLC that will send us on our way. I'm Purple, and this is Mass Effect 2. Last time out, I straight up ignored the gameplay section, and that was for good reason. They just hadn't really figured it out yet. Gunplay in Mass Effect 1 was lacking any real feeling of impact or purpose, feeling like throwing numbers at your opponent until they ran out of the will to live rather than feeling like a gunfight. Powers felt more like a damage multiplier being applied than like something that had shifted the battlefield, and every room you fought in seemed to be the same. Here in the sequel, we see a complete overhaul, and while it hadn't reached its final form, the work the team put in was obvious. Right from the start, guns feel heavy and like they have a meaningful impact on those that you're shooting at. From mechs to mercs, when they're under fire, you see the immediate effect your rounds are having on target, and that feels awesome. You can actually interact with the cover manually, not having that weird automated system from the first game that was so frustrating. Oftentimes in the first games, I'd be surprised to notice when my team used their abilities, but here you can see them rip across the battlefield, leaving no room for doubt as to whether or not they were in the fight. From the way Overload zaps his shield to Shockwave cascading across the battlefield, when you use an ability, there's no mistake on the impact you have on your opponents. The team behind the game turned Mass Effect into a true action game. Unfortunately, they made one change that makes the game a real nightmare in some scenarios. In the first game, you didn't have ammo, you just let heat bleed from your gun when you fired too long. Here in the sequel, though, we have thermal clips, which means you can run out of ammo, and on higher difficulties, it's a very real possibility. That would seem like a great way to encourage intelligent power use and coordination with your team, and while that becomes part of it, the truth, for me at least, is that it makes fights feel boring. I'm a massive believer that just raising the HP level of enemies does not make for a more exciting challenge. When I'm spending more time rationing ammo than I am participating in the level, then it just isn't exciting. But if you turn the difficulty down to normal, you just blow through everything. Pair that with a lack of Mako to explore planets, no, the Hammerhead does not count as a replacement, and the exploration aspect of the game has been cut down greatly. Don't get me wrong, for me, this was an improvement. I hated shuffling around boring planets looking for a building I'd fought through a dozen times. But the Mako had an inescapable charm, and there's plenty of people who really did just like driving around looking at places, hoping there was something cool to find. I actually much prefer the curated hubs we find in Omega, Ilium, the Citadel, and if you count it, Tuchanka. It's always fun to listen to what teammates have to say and to find these little encounters they set up. It's no Red Dead 2, but I mean, what is? It occurs to me that I should probably tell you a little bit about said hubs as they make up a notable part of the world to explore in Mass Effect 2. To start off with, we have Omega. It's a city built into an asteroid that is being mined for Element Zero, the material used to keep the world moving here and create Mass Effect technology. Omega is the seedy underbelly of the galaxy, and it feels that way with tones of red and black everywhere. It feels like a trip down the wrong alley could cause you serious problems, even being how powerful you are. Omega is run by Arya T'Loak, a brutal Asari who runs the place with an iron fist. This is being made clear by the place only having one rule.
Don't fuck with Arya.
Next up, we have the Citadel, which is making a return from Mass Effect 1, but in a slightly different form. If you don't know, this is a giant floating space station that acts as the hub for galactic politics and also the home to many people from many races all over the galaxy. In the first game, it was one big interconnected map that you got around using loading screens disguised as elevators. Here in this game, it's closer to a department store in Pokemon where there's multiple levels to explore via the stairs. There's shops that you can declare as your favorite on the Citadel, clubs, Admiral Anderson, now Counselor Anderson, depending, but unfortunately not Fish in the Lake.
What?
Later on, we'll take a trip to Ilium, which is something resembling a Vegas vibe, and it feels rather nice around here. But with legal drugs, depravity, and even slavery, it becomes obvious pretty quick this place is just Omega with a shiny coat of paint. It is a fun place to be, though, and my favorite of the hubs. There's also the Krogan homeworld of Tuchanka, but while there's stuff to do here, it's unlikely you'll stop outside of missions to be done. Alright, back to the video. All in all, the point is this. Mass Effect 2 is superior to what they had in Mass Effect 1 in terms of gameplay, but it hadn't yet become the pinnacle of the series. Now we find ourselves in a bit of a pickle here, because the main story in this game is actually rather short, less than 10 missions depending on how you count it, so we're going to have sections about the main portion of the game, which is recruitment and loyalty missions, and I'll sprinkle in the main story where it feels appropriate. Like right now. I spoiled it a bit at the beginning, but Mass Effect 2 starts with the end of the Normandy and its commander. We see how the crew has been sent out to track down what remains of the Geth in the region, but they aren't the true threat out here, and we don't have to wait long to find out who is, as the collectors pull up on us. There's no call for quarters. The Normandy takes a battering, with Joker doing everything he can just to try to keep the ship together. With our home in flames, Shepard will call for the crew to evacuate, sending them to escape pods while heading up to the front of the ship to collect a stubborn Joker. It's downright surreal coming off of Mass Effect 1 right into a Normandy in flames. You'll even do a bit of a spacewalk to get to the cockpit. Joker doesn't want to give up on the ship, but Shepard is able to make him see reason, getting him into an escape pod just in time. But he isn't able to get himself inside, being ripped away into the vacuum of space, starting off one of the strongest game openings I've ever seen. We'll wake up 2 full years later on an operating table surrounded by strangers, and then later we'll wake up again with the whole place seemingly coming down around us. There's nothing to do but suit up, grab a weapon, and wade into the mechs. We've got a woman by the name of Miranda in our ear guiding us out, but we won't get any real answers until we run into Jacob Taylor, head of security and apparently bad at his job. Keep moving until we find Wilson, who's been shot and acts as our metagel tutorial. Later on, we'll actually find Miranda, who has some decisive thoughts about Wilson.
Miranda, but you were...
Dead?
What the hell are you doing?
Alright. When we're on the shuttle, we'll finally get some info on who these guys are. They work for Cerberus. You know, those guys from the first game who did a bunch of random evil stuff like Thresher Maw attacks on Alliance troops and evil science stuff and killing that one guy for finding stuff out. So, that's not a great start, but whatever, they're taking us to meet the man in charge, who's apparently quite the elusive figure. Wait, you're telling me he's literally, his name is the Elusive Man. That's the most Elon Musk villain shit I've ever heard. Anyway, he's not all bad, I guess, as he sets the stage for the plot we find ourselves in. The collectors have been busy while we were away, abducting entire human colonies, and the Elusive Man has brought Shepard back from the dead in order to stop them. He sent us to the most recent colony to be abducted in Freedom's Progress to learn what we can. It's downright eerie in the colony as we come in after dark and are only greeted by some mechs set to attack us. We run into a familiar face later on, though, in the form of Tali Zora, who was just as surprised to see us as we are to see her. And it has to be said, BioWare's drastically improved cinematography really shows up here early, and it's something to praise them for as it's damn near night and day. Turns out Tali is leading a team looking for Quarian named Vitor, who was here on pilgrimage. We agree to split up and look for him together, as he may be the key to finding out what happened here. The rest of the combat in this level isn't much to speak about. Some Quarians die, we shoot some mechs, boom, bop, done. But when we find Vitor, he's clearly been traumatized by the events that have taken place here, and we are shown one of our new tools we use to get through to him in the interrupt system. An idea lifted from the original conversation system in Mass Effect 1 occasionally will get the option to make impactful decisions as either a paragon or a renegade. Some are done better than others, but for the most part, they are an awesome addition to the game. Vitor does his best to show us what happened here through footage he stitched together. The collectors came in with some kind of swarm that paralyzed the colonists and lets them be taken without firing a shot. It's a terrifying fate to consider when you don't know where they're going, and far worse when you do know. Then we'll get one of the game's first choices, as Miranda wants us to take Vitor back to Cerberus and Tali wants to take him back to the flotilla. There's literally no reason to take Vitor away other than being a dick, so give him to Tali and head back to debrief. Having confirmed it was the collectors that were attacking the colonies, the elusive man tells us the plan. Build a team and hit the Omega-4 relay, which leads to the collector homeworld. He's already hit us with a good start, tracking down a damn good pilot for us.
Hey, Commander. Just like old times, huh?
I can't believe it's you, Joker.
Look who's talking. I saw you get spaced.
Got lucky, with a lot of strings attached. How'd you get here?
It all fell apart without you, Commander. Everything you stirred up, the Council just wanted it gone. The team was broken up, record sealed, and I was grounded. The Alliance took away the one thing that mattered to me. Hell yeah, I joined Cerberus.
You really trust the elusive man?
Well, I don't trust anyone who makes more than I do. But they aren't all bad. Saved your life, let me fly, and there's this.
It's good to know we'll be alongside someone we can trust. But it gets better as they also built us a brand new ship. The Normandy SR2, as she's called, has gotten a few upgrades. Mostly just being bigger and faster, but also having Edie, an AI who handles our cyber warfare division along with being helpful wherever she can. Of course, even a shackled AI would give anyone a moment of pause, but in my book, Edie is alright. Start off by meeting a few of the crew. Yeoman Kelly Chambers, who doubles as a person to keep track of your messages and acting as an unofficial shrink for the crew. Dr. Chakwas has made a return to the Normandy medbay. Then we have Mess Sergeant Gardner, who cooks and cleans, helping to keep the non-essential stuff moving. And lastly, Ken and Gabby, young but talented engineers who will do their best to keep the engine running well. Having met everyone, we will head for Omega, where we can find the first of our crew we can look to recruit, bringing us to the team building section of the game. There's a story mission in the middle of building said team, but for convenience, we'll do all the important recruitments in one section. We won't have time to break down every one of them in detail, but we do have time for some of the best. The most logical place to start your recruitment is with Morden Solus on Omega, who's working a clinic in the wards fighting off what we later learn is a collector-made plague. The mission I want to talk about, however, is the other person you can find on Omega, and that's a notorious vigilante by the name of Archangel. You see, Omega is pretty much run by three major merc bands that operate there: the Blue Suns, the Blood Pack, and the Eclipse. They all have their own little niche and portion of the market under their control, always fighting with the other two for a bigger slice of the pie. Then this guy called Archangel shows up and alongside a small team declared war on every criminal on Omega and actually did so much damage that the three merc bands put their differences aside to hunt him down together. He sounds like just our kind of guy, so we sign on with the Blue Suns recruiter to go undercover with the gang and get him out. See, it turns out they killed his entire team, but Archangel is so well entrenched in his home base that they're throwing as many bodies at him as possible, hiring anyone off the street with a gun. I will admit, I do kind of have a minor problem with this. Arya knew who we were the moment we pulled up, and I'd like to think the Blue Suns are half as well informed as she is, so it's kind of weird to think that someone who stands out like Shepard wouldn't have a hard time floating under the radar, but it is what it is. At least you get the opportunity to stop this dumb young kid from marching off to his death for the sake of pride. Considering that you can buy a toothbrush in this universe for 6,000 credits, a death march across a super sniper bridge only paying 500 credits seems super dumb, but hey, it's a hard life and people need money, so I get it. Catch a ride over and we can wander through the merc base learning what we can about the people we'll be up against. First is Jaruth, who runs the Eclipse and has a personal beef with Archangel, who apparently killed his brother recently. The Eclipse rely heavily on tech-related attacks, sporting strong engineers backed by an army of mechs. You can sneak into one of the back rooms and hack the heavy mech they brought with them to give us a surprise edge later on. Next up is Garm, the leader of the Blood Pack. He's a massive Krogan who just kind of hates everyone, and it's clear that he will be a problem later on. The Blood Pack, are an interesting combo of Krogan, the tanks of the battlefield, and Vorcha, paper-skinned but ruthless creatures willing to press you constantly. Both have a natural health regeneration that means picking at them over time won't really help. You have to meet them on their terms, all or nothing. Last up is Tarek, the leader of the Blue Suns. Zaid makes the interaction more interesting as they know each other, and he will allow his second-in-command Genta to answer our questions. By the way, if you don't know, Zaid was originally kind of like DLC pre-order bonus character. He's a mercenary that we apparently paid to work for us. Secret lore is he founded the Blue Suns way back, blah blah blah. That's Zaid, cool. Blue Suns are the more conventional of the forces we will face, made up of mainly Batarians, humans, and Turians, which, if you know anything about the universe, is an interesting combinations. Batarians hate humans, humans hate Turians, Turians hate humans, humans hate Batarians, it's a whole thing. There's nothing particularly spectacular about the organization over most of the game, but here they do have a gunship that they intend to use. Speaking of which, when you're ready to progress, we can see Sergeant Kathka, who is both organizing the attack and fixing said gunship. He fills us in on the plan. All of us freelancers will head across the bridge to draw Archangel's attention while the real mercs lead an infiltration team to catch him unaware. Kind of a brutal plan, but who cares, we signed up. We'll get the signal to go, but before we can leave, we can use one of the fancy Renegade prompts to make sure the gunship won't be at 100% the next time they need it. We head across the bridge to lead our own sneak attack, but honestly, considering how this guy is holding a rifle, I'm not sure Archangel would have needed much help. We reach his sniper perch before getting a reminder that BioWare is really flexing their cinematography classes yet again.
Archangel?
Shepard. I thought you were dead.
It's good to see a friendly face, and I'm sure that Garrus feels the same way. Turns out his time spent since the Normandy destruction has been eventful to say the least. There will be time to catch up later on, but for now it's time to set up and start beating back waves of mercs. It starts with the Eclipse, and truth be told, it's not really that interesting. They throw waves of troops at us with some mechs later on that we've already dealt with. The next section is much harder though, as the Blood Pack is blasting in from below and we'll have to head down and seal all the doors. To make it harder, you should probably leave one of your squad mates behind to help Garrus defend up top. It can actually be pretty challenging with one less gun that you're used to and seemingly endless troops pushing against you, making it so that we're pushed back against the clock to get the doors closed. To make that better, when we get back, it'll be Garm waiting for us, who has a health bar that rivals that of Rick the door technician. With two of the merc bands taken care of, we regroup and decide it's time to try and get out, but Tarek will have something to say about that, bringing his gunship to bear, bringing down Garrus, and allowing his troops to flood the building. It's not a particularly tough fight, but the concern will be Garrus, who we rush back to the Normandy medbay. Jacob lets us know that they did what they could, but he took a real beating. Not to worry though, Mr. Vicarian is a tough old bastard who isn't going to let a couple scars slow him down. Garrus won't be the only person from the original Normandy crew to make a return, but it's a damn good place to start. Next up, we head to the prison ship Purgatory to pick up a crew member known as the Convict. The Purgatory is an interesting vessel. It's a for-profit prison in space run by the Blue Suns and designed to hold the galaxy's most dangerous, and therefore most valuable prisoners. You see, the ship makes their money by having the home planet of the prisoners pay for their incarceration aboard the ship. Otherwise, they'll just drop them back off. So, it's kind of blackmail in a way. Here's where it gets really interesting. The Warden is clearly confident in the operation he's running here, willing to allow Shepard to keep his guns because he feels like we're not a threat to him or his ship. He's a hard man who deals with the worst all the damn time, like this random guy we meet on the way in who's killed dozens of people, but is considered small time by this prison's standards. He even begs us to buy him and take him with us, saying nothing could be worse than here. See, it turns out people can simply buy prisoners and take them away and do whatever they want with them. There's one thing that puts a shiver down the spine of both of these men, however, and that's the name of the person we're here for. Jack. The Warden is confident against the man who defeated Saren and became the first ever human Spectre, but Jack? Jack scares him. This makes you wonder who it is we're here to pick up. There wouldn't be much gameplay if everything here went to plan, so naturally it's a trap and the Warden will try to capture us to hold Shepard for ransom. That's not gonna go well, of course. We fight our way across the ship until we find the unit holding Jack. Unfortunately, the only way to get them out is to hack the console, which will open the entire cell block. No other way, however, so we hit the button and prepare for hell. Jack might not be exactly who you were picturing, however.
That's Jack. We have to get down there.
Well, we better go find her, so head into the hell we created as prisoners riot and the guards try to regain control. It's a whole ass mess, but truth be told, apart from some areas where cover can be tricky, there's nothing super unique in our path. Our final hurdle, however, will be the warden who's protected by shield generators and spouting off about how much this all sucks. No one cares. We catch up with Jack on the way to the Normandy. She's certainly a force to be reckoned with, but she's also an act first, think later kind of person. I wouldn't tell her to her face, but I wouldn't have yeeted this armored guy at the window separating me from the vacuum of space. She also has some kind of beef with Cerberus that's so strong it has her arguing about whether or not she wants a ride on the only ship that can get her off purgatory. To be fair to her, she smells a deal to be made, and I do want her on the ship, so she barters for access to the Cerberus database when she's aboard, which I grant her. Jack and Miranda get along incredibly well, as you might have guessed, just destined to be friends right from the word go. I actually have an entire video about Jack I did for N7 Day if she interests you, but for now, that wraps up the convict, and next up we'll be going after a killer of another kind, in the assassin. Thane Krios is a Drell assassin who might be willing to fight alongside us, and so we start by tracking him on Ilium. We'll check in with a local Asari who we learned Thane contacted for info on his target Nisana Dantius, who you may know from the first game if you did her side quest where she gets us to kill her sister. Turns out her activities haven't gotten any more family friendly in the last 2 years since we've seen her. Serena gives us the rundown on the towers we'll be heading into, which are still under construction, and offers to drive us up when we're ready to go. It's downright nasty when we first pull up with mechs running down some innocent construction workers in the tower, and we save who we can, although most don't make it. We fight our way up the tower against Eclipse mercs, which means tech attacks and mechs. Nothing special, but it is fun. What is interesting, however, is once in a while we'll get a reminder that there's an assassin somewhere in here. Like here, where he'll drop a body down a vent above us, or when he saves these workers by locking them away where they'll be safe. The mission is pretty fun as you work through level after level, along with giving us one of the colder renegade moments in the game that I think most players will in fact go for. After fighting across a windy bridge and through so many people I entirely ran out of ammo, having to spam squad orders and powers to finish off the last of the Eclipse, we make our way into Nisana's office. She's convinced we're here to kill her, which to be honest isn't an entirely unfair expectation. Unlucky for her, however, we aren't here for her and there's no way to buy us off. Also, frankly, I don't really feel bad for what's about to happen to her.
You stay put. When I'm finished dealing with this nuisance, you and I are going to... Who?
Now, did I choose to talk about Thane because that was one of the coolest things ever in the history of ever? Yeah. Frankly, he just isn't what you would expect from someone called an assassin. He's calm, collected, and spiritual of all things. He's one of my favorites in the game, though, and we'll talk about the conversations with him later on. An interesting note is that Jacob doesn't like him, and I'll be honest, I couldn't care less about his opinion. Now, I find myself in an awkward position because I think Tally's recruitment mission is one of the best in the game, and I think her loyalty mission is one of the best things ever added to the Mass Effect universe. However, I have an entire video dedicated to the Quarians and the Geth, and as a result, I feel to speak on them here would be redundant. So I'm going to ask you to be satisfied that I have acknowledged their excellence elsewhere, and that's the only reason you won't find it here. For now, though, it's time to hop back into the main story as we'll have gotten the call to head to the colony of Horizon, which appears to be the next place the collectors are heading to. Thankfully, it seems Mordin has cracked the code on how they freeze the colonists and is able to come up with a countermeasure to keep us safe, at least in small groups. There's another twist, as in the mission's opening cutscene, it turns out the Vermeer survivors on Horizon, in my case, Caden, although they'll get hit early as the swarms roll in, freezing the entire colony in place. When we land, we'll have to fight off some collectors along with some husks. The husks go on to effectively confirm that they came from Sovereign, not the Geth, and that the collectors are working with the Reapers. Later on, we'll meet Harbinger, who is the closest thing we'll get to a direct antagonist in this game. I'll spoil it and tell you he's the leader of the Reapers, but is currently remote controlling the head Collector dude. All that really matters is that he will buff Collector troops by taking them over mid-fight, giving them armor and barriers, then spamming you with very strong biotic attacks. Honestly, he's easily the best enemy in both of the first two games, as his relentless pursuit and ability to knock you out of cover will actually force you to really focus on him, making you vulnerable to the rest of the enemies on the field. Later on, we'll find an engineer hiding in a storage room who informs us about some defense towers the Alliance was working on installing when the Collectors showed up, so we decide to finish setting them up to help us push the Collector ship back. The fight to hold out while EDI configures the towers is genuinely difficult, with wave after wave of Collector troops in all forms from all sides who constantly keep you repositioning to stay alive. Later in the round, we face the first Praetorian, which is a flying bug husk thing, which is more annoying than dangerous, but can still give you serious problems if you're caught lacking. With the battle finished, though, the guns will come to life, battering the collector ship and forcing them to take off. They got half the colony, but through our efforts, we were able to save the other half. Not everyone is happy about our efforts, but it turns out at least one person here is willing to stand for us.
They're gone.
Half the colony's in there. They took Egan and Sam and Lilith. Do something.
I didn't want it to end this way. I did what I could.
More than most, Shepard.
Shepard. Wait. I know that name. Sure, I remember you. You're some type of big Alliance hero.
Commander Shepard, captain of the Normandy, the first human Spectre, savior of the Citadel. You're in the presence of a legend, Delan. And a ghost.
All the good people we lost and you get left behind. Figures. Screw this. I'm done with you Alliance types.
I thought you were dead, Commander.
It's not the easiest reunion with Kaidan, mostly hampered by dialogue options that don't really allow us to properly explain our actions or defend ourselves. It's one of the weaker moments in the game as far as writing goes, but not the absolute worst. That we'll get to later. This was a success on some level, but there's still a lot of missing people out there, and that means our job isn't done. Once we debrief with the elusive man, we'll find Jacob pondering life on a ship, hurtling into a suicide mission.
I guess we're really gonna do it. Hit the Omega-4 relay. Take the fight to the Collectors in person. Looking forward to the action. After seeing what those bastards did on Horizon, though, makes you think.
They're powerful, but we've got a few tricks for them. If anyone can stop them, we can.
No argument there, Commander. Horizon just made it hit home. What we're doing, what we're up against. Gonna go take care of a little unfinished business. I imagine everyone else is too. Getting some closure, you know?
So we've collected an entire crew of people willing to risk their lives heading into hell, and frankly, they're all phenomenal people with incredible stories. We've got Miranda, who is literally designed to be perfect and is living her life trying to live up to the expectations set for her. There's an assassin in Thane who's trying to do something good for the universe before his time is done. Morden, who helped shape the future of an entire race of people, being personally responsible for helping keep the Krogan burdened by the genophage. An ancient Asari warrior in Samara who lost everything, giving up her freedom in order to serve the universe. There's Jacob. Jack, who has known nothing but a life of suffering and violence, committed to saving the lives of those she probably views as enemies. But while they're going through the relay one way or another, they're loyal to the mission, not to Shepard, and will be given the opportunity to win their trust in a series of missions each of them will approach us with personally. To start with, let's look at Kasumi. She was originally a DLC character, the thief who joined along for both the money and because she was promised a chance to go after something that was taken from someone she loved, a gray box from her partner Keiji. It contains both the memories of their time together and a secret dangerous enough to start a war. So we find ourselves in the midst of a heist mission, heading to the Black Tie event alongside Kasumi that's being hosted by Donovan Hawk, the man who killed Keiji Okada and stole the gray box. We talk our way in the door after our gift is found to be a little bit suspicious, but Kasumi is asked to stay outside, which literally doesn't stop her in the slightest. We find the vault door and see what we're dealing with, a kinetic barrier, a DNA scanner, and a voice lock. So we tackle it one step at a time, first off following the power line to deactivate the barrier. Next up, I chose to head into the security room and have what was apparently a very quiet gunfight where we can search for the password to the vault. Then we need to grab a voice print, so it's time to chat up the host, which you can do with an intelligent dialogue choices, or hitting a Paragon or Renegade dialogue option. Last up, we'll need to find our way into his room to get a DNA sample. You can do this by fighting your way in, or doing a little investigating and a little bit of trickery. You'll pull up DNA from wherever you can, but some places are more useful than others.
It's clean.
It's a plant.
With all that done, head for the vault door and get dressed while Kasumi gets us in. Hawk's vault is genuinely incredible, containing treasures from ancient Quarian writing tablets to a gun that killed 2 presidents, to even Lady Liberty's head. But among all these treasures, the most valuable would have to be the gray box we were here for in the first place. Turns out Hawk expected it was Kasumi at the door he saw and laid a trap for us, sending in his mercs. We'll have to battle our way out of the facility, which is honestly just great fun. It's clearly well balanced around Kasumi's abilities and has a well laid out arena for us to move through. Once we breathe fresh air, Mr. Hawk will engage us directly in his gunship, firing down on us as whole squads of troops move in to greet us. The shields on the gunship keep recharging, but when we give her a window, Kasumi will take a daring move to bring them down.
Got a clear shot. Here we go.
shields down. Let's tear that thing apart.
With this, we can destroy the gunship and grab ourselves a ride out of here. The story gets more complicated as Kasumi fires up the gray box and is overjoyed to find herself with Keiji again. Unfortunately, he left her with a brutal choice, asking her to destroy the gray box so the secret inside is never revealed to the world, but this would mean losing the last piece of him that she has, her only way to connect with her lost lover. We can push her to destroy it, but I don't know, something just feels wrong about that, so I always let her keep it, so long as she vows to protect the data. Kasumi is always an interesting person, but there's something about this that just feels nice. And I don't know, bringing a little bit of joy to the universe treats me just fine. For our next two entries, unfortunately, there won't be such a heartwarming story to be found. First, we look to Samara. She's an Asari Justicar, an ancient order dedicated to rooting out evil wherever they find it. We found Samara on Ilium tracking a dangerous fugitive, and when she locates her, we're asked to help kill her. She explains that she has spent hundreds of years tracking down this killer named Mornith, and she explains why. Mornith is what's called an Ardot-Yakshi. It's a genetic flaw that can appear in pure-blood Asari that means when they mate with someone, the other party will be killed. It becomes an addiction for the Ardot-Yakshi, and if they don't agree to be quarantined, they have to be killed as they leave behind astronomical body counts. Of course, we agree to help Samara understand the severity of the threat, but one last twist will make this mission hit a lot closer to home.
There is one thing more. This creature, this monster. She is my daughter.
It's brutal work, but it has to be done, so we head to Omega in search of Mornith. We start with Arya, who has a lead to give us as she seems genuinely perturbed by what she hears, pointing us to the mother of a young woman who was killed recently. We meet with Diana, the mother of Neff, who is just as grief-stricken as you would expect a mother to be after the loss of her daughter, as she begs us to find the killer. We look through Neff's room and find out she was in fact with Mornith, and gives us the password to get into the private part of Afterlife. Samara gives us the plan. We go in alone and unarmed. I'm loving this. And do our best to draw out Mornith before heading back to her apartment where we can spring a trap and kill her. I'm not in love with this plan, but with no better options, we strip off the armor and head in with the goal of being approached by Mornith. Chat with the guy about a band she likes for info later, help out a dancer who's being harassed by a patron, tip off a reporter who's about to be killed, dance the night away. There's plenty of things to do, and when you've done enough, you can get the invite back to her table. Say all the right things, and we can be invited back to her apartment. We aren't back here long before we have a slip-up and she figures out something is wrong. One thing that always annoys me about this is that she'll pick up on us knowing she's killed before, but we can literally point out the dueling swords just minutes before this and she casually mentions watching the life drain out of people's eyes. It's a small gripe, but it exists for me. This interrogation will depend on how high your Paragon and Renegade score is, with you being able to get deeper the more charismatic you are. But don't worry, even if you can't pass these checks, Samara will burst in to confront Mornith. This leads to a very evenly matched fight between the two of them, which in a surprise turn we actually have the ability to influence. Should we choose, we can help Mornith kill her mother, ending the centuries-long fight between them. As a thank you, Mornith will take her mother's appearance and fill in for her on the ship, doing so perfect an imitation that no one else can tell the difference. It's kind of a stupid choice, if I'm honest. There's no logical benefit to do this. Mornith is no stronger than her mother, as we saw, and sure as hell isn't as loyal. It really exists just as a Renegade playthrough option, but hey, choices are cool. I would dare to assume the vast majority of players will help Samara to kill Mornith instead, yet again ending their war. When Mornith kills her mother, there's no hesitation and Samara reacts much differently, seemingly burdened but accepting her fate. It's clear that Samara is pained by what she must do, taking a moment, just a moment, to say goodbye to her daughter. It's clear this weighs heavily on her, and as a result, the moment feels much more powerful. One of the best moments in the game is when you ask her if she wants to talk afterwards, and she gives you the only answer that can be expected.
Shepard, what do you think I will say? What can I say? I just killed the bravest and smartest of my daughters. There are no words. I will try another time. For now, show mercy on a broken old warrior and let us leave.
This isn't the most complicated or nuanced piece of media you'll ever see, but the simple truth is that a mother forced to dedicate her life to hunting down her own daughter will hit anyone in the feels, as it should. It's a tough story that hit me harder the older I've gotten.
Morinth haunted my dreams and waking hours equally. For the first time in 400 years, I am free. I am a ruined vessel of sorrow and regret, but I am free. It is not a feeling I can describe.
Was it worth it?
It was never a question of worth, but of need. I had to take the action I did, as did she. This was never a story that would have a happy outcome.
You did your duty. What about your feelings?
One of my daughters is dead. My hopes, my dreams were all bound up in my children. Still, my feelings have always come after my duty. The same is true of you.
You said that Morinth was a monster. But she was still your daughter.
She was the strongest and smartest. She would not accept the injustice thrust upon her. She fought to the end. I am so proud of her, Shepard.
Last up, though, is something that I found even harder, as we will receive a request for help from Morden. You see, the Doctor here has a past with the Solarian Special Task Group. Part of his big mission was leading a team that would go on to modify the genophage. If you've forgotten, the genophage was a genetic disease given to the Krogan that makes it so only 1 in 1,000 children given birth to aren't stillborn, effectively killing 999 out of 1,000 children born. See, it was discovered that after all this time, the Krogan had started to evolve past it and would eventually outgrow the genetic genocide forced on them by the Solarians. This wouldn't work for said Solarians, though, and they would begin to assign a team to update the disease and keep it working. To me, this is monstrous, but Morden will defend it as a necessity that had to be done and was best for everyone involved, citing extensive research into the topic. What he needs help with, however, isn't fixing the things he did, but rescuing someone who helped him as he learns one of his former teammates has been captured by the Krogan and will need to be saved as he's being forced to work on a cure for the genophage. Of course, I agree to help and plot a course for the Krogan homeworld of Tuchanka. If you didn't shoot him in the first game, Rex is here to say hi and point you in the right direction, but regardless of who sits on the throne, it's the Chief Scout we'll want to talk to as he can get us on a truck headed to the Werlock base where our rescue mission will take place. Like most of Tuchanka, it's a dirty, rundown place where just about everything is trying to kill you, from Klixen to Varen and Vorcha, as we'll find ourselves in conflict with the Blood Pack. Eventually, we'll make our way into an abandoned hospital, which is just as unsettling as you would expect. Right off the bat, the first thing we'll find when we get in is a dead human who it appears was captured to be used as a lab rat in the experiments here. Morden explains that humans' genetic makeup allows them to be useful test subjects, but it still isn't something any moral scientist would stoop to. A little farther in, we'll find the clan Werlock spokesperson who will preach to us about how when they cure the genophage, the Grogan will return to glory in order to bathe the galaxy in blood yet again, like they had before. Thankfully, you can cut his speech a little bit short. As we get deeper into the facility, we'll find more and more information about Malin's work to cure the genophage, and we get a better understanding of the brutality of his work. Morden will continue to defend the work he did on the genophage modification team, but while the rational side of him supports what he did, you can see that the morality of it is becoming more and more complicated. This reaches new levels when we find a dead Krogan woman who died in pursuit of a cure for the plague her people carried. In possibly the most impactful scene in the game, he looks upon the results of his actions and makes no effort to hide that this bothers him. He never wanted people to suffer. He never wanted this.
Genophage modification project altered millions of lives, then saw results. Ego, humility, juxtaposition, frailty of life, size of universe. Explored religions after work completed. Different races. No answers. Many questions.
You can agree with Morden or simply let him off the hook, but the scene is elevated when you're willing to stand against him.
So you're willing to sterilize a species based on the evidence of a few simulations?
Yes, millions of data points, years of arguments, countless scenarios, all noted Krogan fragmentation as dangerous, no unified culture to support repopulation. Would have been war, Turians and humans destroying Krogan utterly. Genophage was better, saved lives.
Look at the dead woman, Morden. It doesn't look like you saved her.
No, it doesn't. Worked with available data. Only option. No other possible. Doesn't matter.
Mass Effect is interesting to me because the best writing I've seen is when you truly get to pick sides, when the game really is neutral and simply allows you to play your part. I've fallen in love with the storytelling in Cyberpunk and it shifted the way I view games. But I still love Mass Effect all the same because it does pick sides. It's clearly telling you to argue against Morden, to show him that he's wrong. BioWare doesn't approve of the genophage, and you're not supposed to either. It's begging you to stand up and be the better person. It doesn't force you to, but it certainly wants you to. We carry on deeper into the hospital to find a captured Krogan who doesn't actually want to be freed. He wants to stay and let them continue the tests in the hopes that he can be part of a greater Krogan future. But not to worry, you can get him back on his feet with a bit of a pep talk.
If you want to help Erdnot, you need to get back there. But it would take a real badass to make it back to camp while injured.
I can do it.
You? I said a badass, not some scout whining like a Quarian with a tummy ache.
I'm standing right here.
After fighting the big boss Krogan, who is exactly the same as all the other Krogan with an extra health bar, we finally find Morden's student and realize we've made a mistake. He wasn't taken and forced to work on this. He chose to. Malin was haunted by the part he played in affecting the Krogan and chose to be here trying to fix what he had done. All the monstrous experiments performed here, all the horrible things he had done, but Malin feels as though it is justified.
Experiments performed here. live subjects, prisoners, torture and executions you're doing?
We've already got the blood of millions on our hands, Doctor. If it takes a bit more to put things right, I can deal with that.
Morden won't allow this to continue regardless of your actions, but you can influence whether he lets Malin live and whether he keeps the data from the experiments. Killing him or not doesn't really matter, but keeping the data will affect you in Mass Effect 3, so I suggest you do. This mission is one of my favorites because it goes on to show BioWare's greatest strengths, and that's when they decide what story they want to tell and guide you gently along the path. They're capable of truly captivating and emotionally charged moments, and that's what makes these games really special. I love Morden and his growth that we get to be a part of in this short mission, but the end of his arc won't be found in this game, so for now, we have a story to get back to. Somewhere in between finishing recruiting and doing loyalty missions, we'll be flagged by the Elusive Man with a can't-miss opportunity. He tells us that a Turian patrol was able to cripple a collector ship before it was destroyed, and then we can have the chance to board the ship and learn what we can. It's just about the most obvious trap in the history of traps in the history of ever, but we'll go through with it because 1, it's too good to pass up, and 2, you can't progress the game if you don't. Truth be told, Mass Effect would prefer if you didn't ask too many questions and just enjoyed the ride, and while I acknowledge that these games have many valid criticisms weighed against them, I'm having too much fun to start poking holes. Speaking of cool, Joker will take us in close as we get a look at the collector vessel. It appears to be offline, so we head on inside. There's something I really never gave BioWare enough credit for, and it's just how spectacular the art direction is in these games. And I think that's because they did such an amazing job, I just never noticed. The Mass Effect universe feels so deeply rooted in realism that it all just feels possible. It feels like I'm looking at a glimpse at a real future, not science fiction. I love the more out there side of science fiction like The Outer Worlds, but they'll never suck me in the way Mass Effect does. Anyways, as we move into the ship, it's easy to find yourself a little unnerved just by the design, but things like piles of bodies don't make it any easier. Then the crew will come upon a station where we can give EDI access and allow her to do a little snooping as she will make a startling discovery. The collectors aren't just puppets created by the Reapers, they're what remains of the Protheans, engineered over hundreds of generations into being the perfect tools for the Reapers' purposes. Sadly, there's no way to save them now, but the least we can do is carry on and try to stop it from happening to us. We get another revelation as we learn that this is the same ship we encountered on Horizon, but not only that, it's the same one that destroyed the first Normandy. This is played as some big aha moment proving the collectors are after Shepard, but I think that just points to the fact that collectors only have one ship. Deeper in the core of the ship, we get a look at just how massive it is, containing enough of these pods to steal millions of humans. With renewed purpose, Shepard gives EDI access to the ship's network, springing the trap. Of course, there was no way the team was getting out of here without some combat, as the battle takes place across multiple moving platforms, occasionally becoming difficult, but not likely becoming too much. Oh, and while EDI is getting us out of here, she makes a fun little discovery, learning that the Elusive Man should have known the Turian distress call was fake, meaning he sent us in here blind on purpose. We can talk to him about that in a minute, however, as for now, the squad will have to beat feet out of there, fighting off enemies and pushing forward as EDI opens the doors to make us a path. The last row of defense from the collectors is groups of husks that feel downright endless, and even with liberal power use, I found myself out of ammo before we could finish them off, making it one of the few tense encounters as they never stop moving forward. Back on the ship, Joker will haul ass to get to Normandy out of harm's way, and here's where I think the game missed an opportunity. You see, the Normandy has 3 upgrades available: better guns, better shield, and better armor. And for all of the ones you don't have, you will lose a crewmate when you hit the Omega-4 relay. But what they could have done is made you lose someone right here if you hadn't upgraded. I know why they didn't, it wouldn't have been fair, but you know what it would be? Excellent writing, upping the stakes out of nowhere and showing you just how dangerous this mission really is. Maybe don't even kill them, just knock them out of commission for a few missions. I don't know, just feels like it could have been cool, that's all. Head up to the comm room so you can tell the Elusive Man he's a dick for sending us into a trap everyone should have known was a trap. Then he sends us into another trap, telling us about a derelict Reaper we need to head over and grab something from. Apparently it's the last piece we need to get inside the relay safely. I'm sure that'll go well. We also find out EDI knows where the Omega-4 relay will be taking us as a result of digging in the collector ship. The galaxy's core. Awesome. For new players, you should know that this next mission is essentially the point of no return. You can technically do missions after it, but you won't want to for reasons I'll get into in a bit. If you thought a collector ship was creepy, you should try the Reaper, as you move through the facility, piecing together what happened to the Cerberus researchers that were here. The Reaper may not be awake per se, but its effects on the mind still are, as it drove the researchers mad, eventually converting them to husks. It won't be long before the trap is sprung as the Reapers put its shields up, locking us inside. With nothing else to be done about it, the team carries on battling husks and their other versions across the ship before an unexpected friend shows up.
Shepard, Commander.
God, I love that guy. Keep fighting until you hit the Reaper's core, where our friendly Geth will open the doors for us before being knocked out. Because, robots are well known for being a bit chinny. Destroy the ship's core, which will lower the shields as we grab the Geth and head for the door. There's a whole argument on the ship about what to do with him, but he's literally the best character in the game, so you best wake his ass up. So, now we have the Reaper IFF, a full squad of loyal people willing to throw themselves into the fire, and a fully upgraded ship ready for the journey. So what else do we need? Well, we need the dumbest mission in Mass Effect, of course. You see, EDI will tell us we need to wait to use the Normandy until they install the IFF, so instead of doing literally anything normal, Shepard packs the entire team onto a single shuttle, which I'm pretty sure they couldn't all fit in, by the way, especially with Grunt, and takes off in the most nonsensical forced series of events so that we can get to this moment. You see, the IFF, like everything else in the game, is a trap. It shuts down the Normandy and calls home, letting the collectors pull up and board the ship. So now, for the first time in history, the whole squad is off the ship instead of just Shepard and 2 others, so that there's only the non-combat crew left to fight off the attack, and let me tell you, they are not up for it. This section will have us controlling Joker as he heads to the AI core to unlock EDI, giving him his only chance at getting the ship back. It's pretty neat if you completely ignore how you got here and the fact it's pretty much entirely on rails. You can die, but you gotta go way out of your way to do it. Then, here's the best part, right? Because the whole crew will be taken as a result, with only Joker being saved when he unshackles EDI, giving her full control of the ship and warps them out of there. So then everyone comes back and it's like, holy shit, this is the worst thing ever. Hey, Joker, the guy who can barely walk without breaking his legs, thanks to his Vrolic syndrome, are you okay? We're so glad you're alive. Then there's Miranda, who just barges in filming an audition tape for Queen Bitch Quarterly or something, screaming her head off about how he caused all of this and how the crew got captured and unshackled AI and EDI and all this garbage. Like, how could this possibly be his fault? She really can be downright likable at this point in the game if you took the time to connect with her, but good Christ, in this moment, I wanted to yeet her out the damn airlock. I'd like to say that walking through the empty Normandy hits you really hard, and maybe it does, but it's been over a decade for me, so I can't remember how it feels the first time. God, I'm old. For me playing now, though, it's just a bunch of empty chairs who were filled with people I didn't know, although there are some things that hit you, like not hearing Kelly when you walk up to the galaxy map. The silence really is what gets you, as you've never really understood how alive the ship feels until there's nobody talking as you walk through. So I mentioned this is the point of no return, and I'll tell you why. For every mission you do between losing your crew and hitting the relay, more of them will die, with everyone but Dr. Chakwas having their head on the block. So with nothing else to be done, it's time to finish the fight and launch the suicide mission. Just like in Mass Effect 1, you can access a romance scene with whoever you've pursued on your way to the relay. Some are a little more fan-friendly, like Miranda. Some are touching, like Jack finally willing to trust someone. But there's something about Shepard staying loyal to Liara and thinking of her as he marches off to hell that hits me some kind of way. It adds a certain weight to the mission that others don't. Regardless of what you do on the way, we're hitting the relay, and BioWare really outdid themselves with the cinematics here. Coming through the debris field just to see the base is an all-time moment in gaming. Then we hit the first wave of defense in the form of the Oculus drones who lie in wait in the debris field for those like us. It's a tough fight, as Joker will fight off half a dozen of them while we head to the cargo hold to push back the ones who got inside. Once we clear the debris field, an old enemy will come out to greet us, and even with our upgrades to Normandy will be pushed to the max, taking punches and landing our own. But, like all of Shepard's enemies, this ship will fall. The explosion will knock us out of the air, though. Well, I guess out of the space. The explosion will knock us out of the space, though that just doesn't sound right. Anyway, it's going to break the ship, and this might be a one-way trip. We're all going to die. No one actually thinks it's going to happen. There's Mass Effect 3. There's no time to cry about it, as we get together to form a plan and destroy the base. We decide to split up into 2 teams, one main force and Shepards who will follow the ventilation system to get access to a panel. We need to open the doors from the teams. Basically, we're going to walk alongside the ventilation tube as we have a person in the ventilation tube, and they're going to pop out behind the door and open them. Okay, got it? Cool. This is where your choices matter, as assigning the wrong fire team leader or event specialist will lead to casualties. Seriously, don't assign Jacob. He's so stupid. If you're terrified of getting this wrong, there's a flowchart out there, but the right answers are pretty obvious if you paid attention to the character of your teammates and their abilities. As we move alongside the vent specialist, there will be 8 valves that need to be opened, allowing them to move forward before the heat overcomes them. It's good at providing a little artificial stress, but in reality, even on Insanity, the enemies fall fast enough and the timers for unlocking the vents are rather long. The scene waiting for the doors to open is very cool, though. This is where we find the pods containing the humans the collectors took, and it quickly becomes a nightmare as we realize they're awake just as they begin to be liquefied. If you didn't do any missions between the crew being taken and here, you'll see one of the Horizon colonists die, but if you waited to prepare, you'll have to watch Kelly Chambers be stolen away from you, and honestly, it might be the most emotionally impactful moment of the game. We pull whoever we can out of the pods, but for now we have a dilemma as the Normandy can make a pickup, but they'll have to land behind us and we have no time to go back. You get to make the choice on whether or not to send one of your squad back with them or not. If you do, they live. If you don't, they die. It's pretty straightforward. Also, if you send an unloyal squad mate, the squad mate will die, but the crew will live. Anyway, the next obstacle comes as there's another door that needs to be opened, and the only way to get to it is through a room flooded with seeker swarms. The decision is made that a strong enough biotic could create a bubble strong enough to get a small team through the passage and behind the door where we could get let through to the main force. There's a couple obvious answers on who it can be, but even though I've tried all three, I always ended up going with Jack, mostly for how it comes up in the next game. The Long Walk, as it's called, is a truly spectacular mission as you march through the base, battling back whoever comes from position to position as you see the specialists fade over time. In the end, we make a mad dash for the door, and it's downright awesome to see. Yet again, the rush to get the rest of our squad through the door is fantastic and tense, especially as we find ourselves on the other side this time. This is it. The center of the base is through here, and that's all that remains. But it isn't over yet, as we'll have to take a squad in to destroy the base, but leave behind everyone else to hold off the collectors while we do our work. It's time to give the final speech and pick our team as we head off to win the day. The fight is actually pretty tough, but not because it's well designed and interesting, but because ammo drops are annoyingly rare, and to give the other team the best chance, you should be taking your weakest squad mates along with you. Truth be told, they build this as a pretty spectacular ending, as when we arrive, we'll find that the collectors are in the early stages of turning the colonists into a literal human reaper. Visually, it's pretty damn spectacular, but it's not really much of a boss fight as you just shoot these tubes in between waves of enemies and drop them down the hole. The cooler people honestly are your team desperately battling for their lives trying to hold the line. We're done here though, and order them to pull back as we pull up the control console to set the base to blow. The elusive man will somehow call us now through all of this, I guess he doesn't have T-Mobile, and tell us there's a better way, giving us the option to kill everyone in the base but leave it intact for Cerberus to use in the fight against the Reapers. You can trust the dude who's betrayed you at every single turn, or you can use your brain. It's up to you. Set the base to blow before we get to the return of our old buddy for a real boss fight. That's honestly not that great either. You just duck when he fires those energy blasts and shoot his weak points when it's safe. Honestly though, this weak boss fight doesn't really upset me as combat has never been the main strength of the game, and that's fine. The actual strength of the game is found in the cinematic that plays after we defeat the boss and have to make a heroic sprint for the exit with your crew. It's honestly pretty damn great and deserves all of its praise.
Do you copy? Commander! Come on, Shepard, don't leave me hanging. Do you copy?
I'm here, Joker. Did the ground team make it?
All survivors on board. We're just waiting for you.
Human, you've changed nothing. Your species has the attention of those infinitely or greater. That which you know as Reapers are your salvation through destruction.
I like that Joker had a moment there to be a badass outside of his chair, but the best part of this is probably the Collector drone, as Harbinger releases control just in time for him to see his impending doom. This scene with the Elusive Man is actually really cool, as the sun behind him will shift colors depending on whether you play the role of a Paragon or a Renegade. You can see which choice I made as it shines here in a brilliant blue. This will end our relationship with Cerberus as Shepard walks away, victorious and on the moral high ground. The end of the cutscene is pretty much just checking out the aftermath of the battle before getting a sneak peek at our ultimate enemy, Harbinger and his Reapers, who are on their way. This marks the end of what's obviously a certified hood classic of a mission, but it's not the end of the game as there's two more things we need to talk about before we can wrap it up and say goodbye. The first being the music. The music of Mass Effect 1 was incredible, but I think it only got better as the series went on with tons of new additions in the second game, the biggest being character themes, with almost every major character getting their own score to represent them. Right off the bat, the Elusive Man theme couldn't have fit him any better. It's hard to describe, but the best way I can define it is that the song feels like a mystery in space, and it perfectly captures the mystery that is the Elusive Man. Samara carries the incredible weight and history of the Justicar culture. You can feel the spiritual side of her work, but also the ferocity all through one track, and it's something else. Simply meeting Legion is a momentous occasion, and the importance of the moment is exemplified in this track, feeling grandiose, yet at the same time weaving in a level of suspicion to it that makes you wary of this would-be friend, as it weaves in a bit of Sovereign's theme, reminding us of the threat posed to us by the machines we faced before. Then there's the magic of the music not meant to represent a person, but a moment. Like the Normandy reborn, as we're presented with a new life, a new chance, and renewed purpose. It puts a smile on my face every single time. Then on a different note, there's Horizon, meant to capture what is first a mystery and later a horror story, as we see with our own eyes the terrors inflicted on the colonies the collectors chose to land on. Later, we'll have reflections, played in a moment to look back on where you came from as you look forward to where you must go. It's somber, emotional, but in the end, encouraging. And as always with Mass Effect, the galaxy map remains timeless and perfect. There really isn't much more that I feel comfortable saying about the music in Mass Effect. There's plenty of people out there to tell you about it from a technical aspect, but I'm not that guy. I can only tell you that it was wonderful. Sometimes melting into a scene to become more of an emotion than a sound, something you feel rather than hear. Other times being bombastic and powerful, grabbing a hold of you and declaring to you what this moment should mean. I love the music of Mass Effect, always have, always will, and I encourage you to give it a listen both in and out of game. But now it's time to end, which means we need to talk about what came after Mass Effect 2 in the form of its downloadable content. Mass Effect 2 set a very high standard for DLC with 3 entries in the Shadow Broker, Overlord, and the game's canonical ending in Arrival. I should probably be upset you had to pay for the ending to the game, and in many other games I would be, but man, it was totally worth it at launch and is now simply included in Legendary Edition, so I'm not going to get it bent out of shape about it. Let's start off with what was simultaneously the least fun, but by far the most impactful on an emotional level. We get the call that a Cerberus research station is having a disaster, something that's becoming a serious habit for them, so we go to investigate. It turns out a VI has gone rogue and is taking over the station while currently in the process of trying to upload itself off-planet. After destroying the antenna, we're given a moment to breathe and learn a little more about the situation from Dr. Gavin Archer, the facility's lead researcher. Turns out he had his own brother interface with the VI in an attempt to communicate with the Geth, and while it worked, it quickly went too far as David turned on them, taking over the station. What we'll be tasked with here is overriding the lockdown by traveling to the other 2 stations before heading to David and taking him down. A notable portion of the DLC will be spent inside the Hammerhead, which was a pretty lame replacement for the Mako, truth be told, that honestly, the game could have done without. It was an attempt to bring back a moment of the open world exploration feel that was in the first game, but all it became was a reminder of how empty those worlds were. At the very least, it being so damn fragile means you actually do have to take care not to die while fighting in the damn thing. We start by heading to Vulcan Station, which is the geothermal plant providing power to the main stations. You'll cross chasms of lava by skipping over rocks and use vents to help you float higher and higher up to the facility. Truth be told, the gameplay here isn't very exciting for the most part, but throughout the levels, you'll be constantly spied on by David through his cameras and aware of his presence as he will pop up on screens throughout the facilities as he attempts to communicate through the digitized screech of his reminiscent of the Geth. It can come off as frightening, but it's a clue about the reality of the situation, and on repeated playthroughs, it's likely you'll see it very differently. With Vulcan offline, we head to Prometheus Station, which is a downed Geth ship they were using to salvage Geth from to experiment on. It's the one unique gameplay moment we get, as the ship has energy shields too powerful for us to destroy, and David has control of the ship's cannons to fire upon us. We bait the cannon into destroying its own shield pylons, allowing us to destroy them, bringing down the main shield before destroying the cannon and making our way inside. It's downright eerie inside as all the Geth are powered down, but a lifetime of gaming tells you that they will turn on eventually. We push deeper into the ship while David watches us all the while, allowing us to advance while observing. We get to the heart of the ship and lift the lockdown, which as expected kicks off the trap. It's not particularly hard to fight out of the ship, but there's a certain weight to it. Maybe it's from the repeat playthroughs, but I can never shake the feeling I'm not doing the right thing. With the lockdown lifted, we head to Atlas Station to finally take David down, but when we get there, it's all just wrong. There's death and carnage all around, but as David becomes more clear, you soon realize it's not a cry of rage, but a cry for help he's making. There's audio logs around here where you can start to really understand what happened here, and later we'll reach a terminal where, when we interact with it, David will drag Shepard into an augmented reality of sorts, allowing us to see as he does. Shepard will be cut off from his crew for this section, but it's clear that while there's combat, David's goal is to show us what happened. We see Dr. Archer becoming more and more desperate as the elusive man threatens to shut them down, but they make a breakthrough when it turns out interfacing David with the VI works. While you could view this as a miracle, it's clear that the toll it took on David was immense. It's honestly hard to watch as David struggles to maintain his sanity while in a constant state of distress, while his own brother pushes him further and further. As David's pleas for help become more and more desperate, it becomes more and more obvious that he's the victim of this whole situation and isn't an enemy to be defeated, but a kind soul in need of help. We bring down the VI and then we see it. The horrors this man was subject to. Mass Effect covers sensitive topics, but the truth is that outside the death of teammates, rarely is anything this painful, but man, it hurts every single time. Then Archer will run in, begging us not to help David, telling us that he never intended to hurt him, but he can do some good with this, saying it all seemed harmless. He argues that the end justifies the means, that if what he did to his brother saves a million mothers the pain of mourning the loss of a million sons, he'll be able to live with that. But while he claims to offer no apologies, it's one thing to rationalize your actions, it's another to look them in the eye.
So you'll sacrifice your brother's happiness for your own ambition.
Square root of 906.01 equals
30.1. What I've done to David is unethical. If he dies, it's unforgivable. Let me take care of him.
You have the option to let the doctor keep him, but I doubt many would. If you're curious, leaving here will result in them experimenting on him until there's nothing left for David to offer, killing him as a mercy. Taking David away is the only real choice here, but what's interesting is that neither choice offers you any Paragon or Renegade points. It's a rare moment where BioWare allows you to decide the morality of the situation for yourself, although I have to wonder if it wouldn't have been better served in a moment that allowed for far more ambiguity than this one, because the truth is, there isn't any gray area on this one.
square root of 912.04 is 30.2. And it all seemed harmless. Square root of 912.04 is 30.2. And it all seemed harmless. Square root of 912.04 is 30.2. And it all seemed harmless.
Overlord is incredibly moving, but it's heavy, so let's move on to something a little lighter. The assassination of Liara! Nah, I'm just kidding. But anyway, Liara is on a mission to track down the most powerful information broker in the galaxy, who simply goes by the Shadow Broker. He's evil, adjacent, and very dangerous, but Liara isn't giving up on this one, as she has a personal reason to hate the broker. He took someone very important to her. Upon giving her info that will lead to the Shadow Broker, we'll be sent to meet at her house and find a crime scene where someone tried to kill her. We're greeted at the scene by Televasir, a Spectre is here trying to find out what happened, which honestly should be a red flag because we're in the Terminus system where the Spectres never operate, but anyway. After searching the apartment, we find a clue Liara left for us and head to her next stop at the Dracon Trade Center where she meant to meet with a data broker named Sakat, who was able to break down the data we provided. When we arrive, the damn building explodes and we head up to find Liara while fighting through the Shadow Broker's private army to do so. It would seem we're on the right trail if he's going to such extreme lengths to stop us. We get to Sakat's office and learn that not all is as it seems when Liara makes an appearance telling us that it was in fact Vasir who tried to kill her and is working for the Shadow Broker. This revelation leads to a bit of a biotic display from the two Asari and a chase as Liara takes off in pursuit of Vasir and the data she's stolen from Sakat. This leads to something we'd get more in Mass Effect 3, Citadel specifically, as we just get a section that's meant to be funny as we commandeer a cab to set off in pursuit of the Spectre. It controls like a brick with floaties in a bathtub, but man is the whole encounter just downright hilarious.
She's got reinforcements!
What kind of guns does this thing have?
It's a taxi, it has a fare meter.
Wonderful.
Eventually, despite the lack of proper armaments on her transportation, Vasir will go down and will pursue her through Azure, which is... well, I'll let Liara explain.
I swear. Hey, we're unharmed. We didn't...
What kind of hotel is this?
Azure. It's a luxury resort with an exotic edge. Azure is slang for a part of the Asari body in some areas of Ilium.
Where?
Mainly the lower reaches, near the bottom.
I meant where on the Asari body.
So did I.
It's hard to blend a serious situation with comedy in a way that's believable, but they manage it here oh so well as the writing team is really allowed to have some fun with it. Eventually, we'll catch the injured Vasir and end up in a hostage situation that one way or another ends in a super lame boss fight where she just uses biotic charge to move across the arena while you pepper her with rounds. I understand it's probably hard to use the Vanguard ability set against the player without it being annoying, but there has to be something better than this as a class designed around being in the thick of the fight, using its abilities to do anything but be in the fight is just weird. Oh well, it's still better than her attempt at moral superiority, going with the "you're no better than me" approach. Yeah, lady, I don't know how to explain this to you, but I've never been a part of a literal terrorist attack, so I don't think we're on a level playing field. And the, oh, you work for Cerberus approach would have hit a little bit better if this wasn't released after most people have finished the game and walked away from Cerberus. Good try, though. Go ahead and die. Anyways, Liara will confirm that Farron was alive, a Drell who helped her after the Normandy attack, and was actually vital in recovering Shepard's body before the Shadow Broker could get to it and sell it to the collectors. We have the location of the Shadow Broker's ship where Farron is being held, and Liara is determined to launch a rescue mission. Pick your teammate here with a little bit of care. Their powers won't matter much, but each gets a unique piece of dialogue from the Shadow Broker, so that's neat. Speaking of neat, the Shadow Broker's ship is cool as fuck as it's flying through a perpetual lightning storm, meaning there's these lightning rods where we can fire on them to hurt nearby enemies with discharged lightning. The ship's design really is cool, but besides the lightning rods, which don't change combat all that much, it's not much to speak on. It's fun, it's just not the greatest arena in the history of gaming. Inside, we find Farron, who's hooked up to a torture device, and we can't break him out, so there's nowhere to go but forward. It has to be said that the Shadow Broker probably has the coolest character design in the series. I mean, look at the fucking guy, he's a unit. He's also calm, cool, and collected, all the things that make a villain intimidating. The Broker also lives up to his reputation, being very well informed, commenting on the state of the Normandy, like whether you have the Reaper IFF, and the state of the Collector base. But Liara gets the chance to show off as well.
It's pointless to challenge me, Asari. I know your every secret, while you fumble in the dark.
Is that right? You're a Yogg, a pre-spaceflight species quarantined to their homeworld from massacring the Council's first contact teams. This base is older than your planet's discovery, which probably means you killed the original Shadow Broker 60 years ago, then took over. I'm guessing you were taken from your world by a trophy hunter who wanted a slave. Or a pet. How am I doing?
The boss fight with him isn't quite as cool as the conversation, but it's downright hilarious watching Shepard throw hands with this massive alien. I have no idea why he's saving the galaxy when he could have been the next John Jones, but that's his prerogative, I suppose. What happens after they kill the Broker is the cool part, however.
Shadow Broker, this is Operative Murat. We've had a momentary connection failure. Can you confirm status?
Operative Shora requesting update. Are we still online?
Shadow Broker, I've lost our feed. We're online and awaiting instructions.
This is the Shadow Broker. The situation is under control. We experienced a power fluctuation while upgrading hardware. It disrupted communications momentarily.
However, we are now back online. Resume standard procedures.
I want a status report on all operations within the next solar day.
Shadow Broker, out.
Goddess of Oceans. It's you. How?
So yeah, I guess we're possibly dating the Shadow Broker now, depending on your romance options. Talk about a power couple. And it doesn't really end there, as we can return anytime we want and access the Shadow Broker info that Liara has been able to dig up that she thinks might be useful. This comes in the form of secret facts about our teammates, investment opportunities, and the locations of planets rich in particular minerals. And this won't simply be tossed aside, as Liara's new resource will come in handy all the damn time in Mass Effect 3. All in all, Shadow Broker is easily the lightest of the 3 DLCs offered, and a nice break from the rather serious nature of the game as a whole. It's mostly well paced, with plenty of stakes to keep you moving forward, and the personal connection to Liara to make sure it matters to you. It didn't add a ton in terms of gameplay, but it did the best it could to throw at least one twist in with each section, and for that I'm grateful. It's a fan favorite for a reason, and I'm sure you'll enjoy all that comes with it should you give it the time of day. Back to Sirius now, I'm afraid, as we'll get the true ending of Mass Effect 2 in the form of Arrival. Admiral Hackett will contact us privately with a request to rescue Dr. Amanda Kenson, who was abducted by Batarians while investigating something related to the Reapers. He requests that we go in alone, as we're the only one he can trust with this, and it has to be kept quiet. So with that, we get dropped off on the planet of Arotot in the Bahak system. It's Mass Effect's first and only attempt at a stealth section, although while it feels required, it's not, and you can go in guns blazing with no consequences. It isn't hard to get in undetected, but it is fun and a little stressful if you haven't realized that stealth was optional. Sorry about that. Once you're in, find Dr. Kenson and rescue her from the torture chair she was stuck in, and it'll be time to leave. She works on hacking us a way out while we spawn trap all the enemies trying to stop us. Once we're on the shuttle and away, Kenson will explain just what happened here. Her team discovered a Reaper artifact that gave them proof the arrival of the Reapers was imminent. They would get to the system and use its mass relay to flood through the galaxy. The team decided to destroy said mass relay in an attempt to slow them down, which is bold. Turns out it's possible to destroy a relay, but the resulting explosion will likely wipe out the entire system along with it. Also, to do so, you have to strap a bunch of rockets to an asteroid and, shove something the size of a small planet into it, but whatever. Shepard says this is a massive step, and he'll need to see proof before he approves anything so drastic. When we arrive at the base, we'll see that the countdown to arrival is down to only 2 days. Which, if you want to wait 2 days, everyone dies, but no one has time for that. We're taken to see the Reaper artifact and find it out in the open, which means just what you'd expect. Everyone is now indoctrinated, and this is about to get a whole lot harder, as the project will throw waves and waves of troops at you. There's 5 waves, and if you survive all of them, the object will knock you out, but either way, you'll find yourself waking up in the medbay with a need to escape. I'm sorry, I'm pretty forgiving with my suspension of disbelief, but as a big fan of combat sports, I just can't help but cringe just a little bit at the thought of bare-handed Shepard one-shotting not one but 2 guys in armored helmets. It looks cool, but it's just a little hard to pretend with. Anyways though, we get a pretty cool sequence as we take control of one of the mechs we've been fighting all game in order to make ourselves an escape path. Back in our armor, there's bad news, as there's only 2 hours left and there's no time to debate the morality of the situation before activating the project. We battle our way to the control panel before being hit with the realities of what we're about to do.
Warning. Activating the project will result in an estimated 305,000 casualties. Do you wish to continue?
This isn't the end of the job, however, as Kenson will still have a couple tricks up her sleeve willing to destroy everything to stop us, so it'll be a race to cool the reactor before she can melt it down and stop the project. It can actually be pretty tough moving through the complex on your own without your usual set of companions to offset the need for any powers you lack, and that's fun, especially if you're a soldier. With the reactor core stabilized, confront Kenson, who is all mad that we won't let her end the galaxy, and so blows us up, knocking out Shepard for the 2nd time in this mission. When we wake up, the only thing to do will be try and escape on one of the last shuttles out. Well, I guess maybe not. Battle through what's left of the indoctrinated troops and run for the comm tower in the hopes of reaching the Normandy, although we clearly called the wrong number. Even though we're technically winning this time, Harbinger has an imposing aura that makes it feel like we might in fact be delaying the inevitable, and it serves as a great way to lead into Mass Effect 3. We get out, but the entirety of the Bahak system is destroyed in the process, something Shepard will have to answer for one day, even if he was right. Hackett comes to see us in person and asks what the hell happened. When we tell him, he trusts us but does acknowledge that he won't be able to keep this from us forever, and Shepard agrees, saying he will turn himself in when our mission here is done. This will set up for the beginning of the next game and end this one. The Reapers are coming and we've bought time, but nothing more. The pace the mission is played at doesn't give us time for a moral dilemma, making it clear this was the right and only choice, but on reflection, we still have to deal with the fact that our protagonist now has the blood of hundreds of thousands of innocent people on his hands. Semi-innocent libertarians. Truth be told, it will weigh more heavily on Shepard than it ever did for me, but it does make a Renegade run in the third game seem far more plausible for some reason. You could argue that this moment broke Shepard and he became an all ends justify the means type, but I like my version, where this will motivate him to do the right thing despite his past. There's room for you to interpret this moment however you like, and I'm grateful for that, but one way or another, in terms of being a DLC, it was great, with unique gameplay throughout the event and a narrative that will leave you pondering for the next few years between games. What a way to end the show. It is worth saying there's things we didn't talk about, but this video is looking far too long as it is, so for our purposes, this will be the end of Mass Effect 2. It's funny, I find myself struggling to form the words to describe how I feel about this game so many hail as a masterpiece. I think the biggest flaw in Mass Effect 2 is that, in essence, it's a full game built around characters without a narrative that really matters. If you were to tell someone about Mass Effect 2, and I guess I am, the main story would become something of an afterthought in all honesty. The best parts of this game are all built around your crew and their stories. The suicide mission is epic, but truth be told, unless you're going out of your way to lose crew members, it loses its luster over repeat playthroughs. But Mordin being forced to come to terms with the damage he did to the Krogan, that's powerful every time. Watching the Geth become more and more human through the eyes of Legion, watching him feel betrayal for the first time, to be hurt and confused, that's something that stirs something in your stomach without fail. Samara's search for her daughter, a burden she laid upon herself and would carry through with perfect resolve, but making it no easier. The case for Tally's innocence, Jack learning the truth about where she was born, Garrus searching for revenge, Grunt becoming a man, a thief and Kasumi taking back what was stolen from her. They all matter, and they're all so much better than the narrative that feels like little more than a distraction from what the game truly is. I'm not saying this to bash Mass Effect 2, I just find myself in a position where I believe that even something so close to perfect deserves to have its flaws pointed out. That being said, even though I played this game so many times, I'm reminded why I always do a fresh playthrough for a video, because I fell in love with it all over again. The characters, their stories, their willingness to fight and die for a better galaxy, for hope. When you get through the planet scanning and running out of ammo and trying to have a conversation only to find calibrations and all the busy work, you can sit back and relax in the warm blanket that is Mass Effect 2's best moments. It may not reach the highest found in Mass Effect 3, but all the same, it is something wonderful to be enjoyed. Mass Effect 2 is a doorway into the RPG genre that anyone curious should be shown.
Treating Joker gives you a kind of stability.
So does this ship, even if it's a copy. Or, hell, maybe it's you, Shepard. Our immovable center. A place for a person to stop and catch her breath. Or maybe I'm just happily drunk. Would it hurt if it was simple like that for once?
Here's to simply being happily drunk.
I'll drink to that.
Ugh. This one took far too long to make, and I apologize for that. I had no intention of turning this into an esports channel, but opportunities kept landing at my feet and it felt stupid to not take them, but I promise this is the main goal of this channel, and it always will be. I'll still keep doing interviews because I love them, but that being said, I'm excited to tackle Mass Effect 3 next, as it still holds the top spot for my favorite game of all time, and I have plenty to say about it. Alright, housekeeping. There's a Patreon now if you want videos early, your name on the screen, or other stuff I'm offering. Sub because you're super, comment because you're cute, and leave a like because you're lovely. I've got most of my year planned out for videos, but if you want to see something in particular, especially reviews on new releases, please let me know. Should I do Star Wars Outlaws? I'm on the fence about it. My heart says yes, Chris Curtis says no, so I'm not sure. Oh well. This should really wrap it up at this point, I suppose. That'll be it for me. This is Purple, signing off. Have a wonderful night, and always remember to smile. Thanks, guys.
I had reach, but she had flexibility. It was brutal. After 9 rounds, the judge called it a draw. There were a lot of unhappy bettors in the training room. We ended up holding a tiebreaker in her quarters. I had reach, but she had flexibility. More than one way to work off stress, I guess.